All right, Michael Van Runkle here for HotCars.com. Finally got a nice day up in Topanga, and I'm really glad I did. I have to give the Slingshot back tomorrow, and I finally got a chance to bring it up here and really experience what the Slingshot is all about. You know, I've been daily driving this thing for about 2 weeks now, and at first I really didn't like it. The problem is, in town, it's just really stiff, the transmission is really lurchy, it shifts really slowly, and I was just not enjoying my experience with the Slingshot. Luckily, then I spoke with my contact at Slingshot, Garrett Moore, and he and I had a long conversation where he explained a lot of the engineering and design decisions that went into the Slingshot. But the most important thing that Garrett Moore told me, we were on the phone and he said, "Have you tried Slingshot mode yet?" And I said, "No, what's that?" And that absolutely changed everything with the Slingshot. So I'm really glad I got a chance to take it up into Topanga on my last day with it and push the Slingshot mode button to change the throttle response, the transmission shifts at higher points and faster, and the steering weight. But even with Slingshot mode on, driving the Slingshot as your daily driver isn't really what it's all about. So I want to take you through what it's like coming up here in the tight curves, breaking the rear end loose, and show you what spirited driving the Slingshot is like. But in the meantime, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. It makes a big difference for us. As I explained in my last review, saving weight is what Slingshot is all about. First, because there are federal rules that dictate how much an autocycle or motorcycle can weigh, but also because of the performance potential. This Slingshot is a Slingshot R. It's got about 203 horsepower and 144 pound-feet of torque and weighs around 1,600 pounds. But the weight distribution really comes into play up here when you're trying to blast around as fast as you can, because the front axle has about 65% of the weight, but the rear has 35%, and that's where all the power is going down. Up here, you know, there's a lot of cyclists, there's a lot of cars. You don't want to risk crossing over the line too much, although I will admit that I did do that a little bit, just because it's so happy, it's so tail happy to get the rear end swinging out. It's called a swing arm, and it's got a belt-driven rear wheel, but the swing really happens as you go through a corner and try to accelerate out the other side, keeping your speed up. Even then, keeping your speed up isn't really what the Slingshot is for. If you wanted to do that, you would want 2 wheels at the rear. It's just a fact of life that you're not going to get as much traction with a 305 millimeter wide single rear tire. Think about it. That's like a 200 horsepower car that weighs 1,600 pounds and only has 155 wide tires at the rear. That's not going to cut it if you're trying to really go fast in a straight line. And even in town with Slingshot mode on, you can burn rubber off a stop sign at half throttle with the traction control fully on, no problem going in a straight line. So let's get up into the canyons and you're gonna lose some traction, but it's fun. The Slingshot is super predictable because so much of the weight is up front and you just swing it around like a pendulum. The open cockpit, the tiny windshield, the bolstered seats, it's a pretty comfortable car to drive up here fast, if you can call it a car with only 3 wheels. The main disadvantage is definitely the transmission. That Aisin AR5 just doesn't do the trick. It shifts too slowly, even in Slingshot mode. You click the paddle shifters, and there's a little bit of a delay and a lurch. Maybe I'm spoiled by dual clutch gearboxes, almost certainly, but I think that the Slingshot could really benefit from a dual clutch. I understand why Polaris put an automatic in the Slingshot, and if you're gonna do the automatic, you gotta have paddle shifters. That market demand is just gonna be so much larger than with the manual transmission. Adding a dual clutch gearbox might just add too much weight, and that's probably why Polaris uses the same AR5 gearbox with a Magneti Marelli produced automatic transmission shifting unit that uses a single plate clutch. But even in town, the single plate clutch is pretty unpleasant. It really feels like you're slapping the car around. I think because it just weighs 1,600 pounds, and that's a transmission that's probably used in a lot of other cars. For me, I'd have to go manual. If I was buying a Slingshot, it would be the base model equipped with a manual. This is a really expensive toy. The Slingshot R costs around $35,000, depending on what other options you get. A base is closer to 20 grand. You get a little bit less power. That's the Slingshot S with 178 horsepower and 120 pound-feet of torque. But I would start there with the manual, and then Polaris will sell you an ECU tune if you decide you need more power, because it's the same engine in the S and the R. It's just a question of the ECU tune. So you can go in and get it flashed, and all of a sudden you've got as much power as the R and you've spent a lot less money. You don't need all the fancy gadgets because you shouldn't be using navigation or cruise control in this vehicle anyways. Much more interested in a Slingshot if I lived in a state that wasn't California, where you don't have to wear the helmet. Yeah, it's a cool helmet, it's carbon fiber, it's really nice, it's very lightweight, but I mean, maybe an open-faced helmet, really, like any state where you don't have to wear a helmet is an ideal Slingshot market. Here in California, the fact that I have to wear a helmet, I mean, look at my hair, it's really uncomfortable. The cheek pads on the beard, unbearable, especially on a day that's as nice as this. It starts to get a little warm even with the visor vented. In the end, I'd go with the Slingshot S with a manual, a clutch pedal, and less power, and then decide whether I need more power later on. It's nice knowing that's an option, and I'm really glad that I got a chance to experience the full power Slingshot up here in the hills. Yeah, it's got the automatic, and I had to live with it and learn how to use paddle shifters, but I would prefer the manual in the end. Big thanks to Polaris for loaning me this Slingshot for 2 weeks, and thank you for watching. Again, please remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It makes a huge difference for us, and we want to keep making videos like this.